Right, let's get straight into it. I'm delighted that Andrew Gwynne is with me. He is the Shadow Social Care Minister. He's also the Labour MP until midnight tonight for Denton and Redditch when he becomes a candidate, as do all the other MPs who aren't standing down. Andrew, thank you for joining me this afternoon.
Thanks for having me, Peter.
Andrew, I definitely want to talk about health because it is incredibly important. You have an ambitious plan to get NHS waiting lists down, and I absolutely want to do that, and we have time to do that. But first of all, I have to ask you about the big political story today, which seems to be two seemingly contradictory things, and I want you to just tell me which one is the truth. Diane Abbott, who is saying that she has been barred from standing as a Labour candidate, and Keir Starmer saying no decision has yet been taken. Why is this? A, what's the truth? And B, why is this taking so long? And C, why is it such a mess?
Look, I don't know why it's taken so long, but what I do know is that Diane Abbott has had the Labour whip restored. That means until midnight tonight, she is a Labour Member of Parliament, part of the Parliamentary Labour Party. Every Labour MP, myself included, that is seeking re-election at this election has to go through a process to be the Labour Party candidate. Now, I was fortunate enough to have the time to be able to go through a full selection process. Obviously, with the election impending, these processes are curtailed. I believe Keir Starmer when he says no decision has been taken. That is absolutely the case.
But he also said on a number of occasions, Andrew, he said on a number of occasions that the investigation was ongoing, but we now know the investigation finished in December 2023.
Well, you know, that was news to me as well, but no decision's been taken.
But Andrew, you're a shadow minister.
Let this go through the due process and let's see.
But it has gone through the due process. It went through by December 2023.
You know, all of us have to go, myself included, have to go through the proper procedures to be the Labour candidate at a general election. Now, I believe Diane has a long history in the Labour Party. She is a trailblazer for black and minority ethnic people.
So why has the Labour Party treated her so shabbily then? She's been treated shabbily, hasn't she?
Peter, there's a due process that has to be gone through.
Which finished in December 2023, and this has been drawn out and strung out until now. And Keir Starmer said a number of times that it was ongoing.
She's apologised for making the comments that she made. She has been readmitted as a Labour MP. And as far as the future is concerned, Keir Starmer has said no decision has been taken in respect of Diane Abbott. Let's go through that process.
Why did he say the process was ongoing on a number of occasions, as did Jonathan Ashworth? I have a letter here from Richard Holden, the chairman of the Conservative and Unionist Party, talking about different processes. A lot of people talking about this today, not just the Conservatives, saying that others like Kate Osamore were treated in a very different way. Others got off with a slap on the wrist for what are seen to be less important offences or things they did wrongly. We still have the question of Nick Brown. What on earth's going on with him?
Well, look, there are processes that have to be gone through, Peter. We're going round in circles here. I have no more information than you have, other than
surely
Diane
they should have briefed you.
A Labour.
Surely they should have briefed you before sending you out to do an interview on behalf of the front bench, Andrew.
Well, the thing is, the press office do not make decisions on who is and who isn't.
The press office, as you well know, the press office, as you well know, Andrew, who brief you for these interviews, talk to the leadership of the Labour Party, and you knew and they knew that this was going to come up in interviews.
Does not decide who is a Labour candidate and who isn't a Labour candidate. There is a process that we all have to go through. None of us are Labour candidates until we are approved by the National Executive Committee of the Labour Party. These processes will have to be curtailed, but let's go through those processes. You know, I'm not going to say to you, Peter, one thing when I do not know what is going to happen, because it's above my pay grade.
Why haven't you been briefed, Andrew? Why isn't the leader of your own party telling you what's going on in your own party before sending you out on the national media to defend decisions he has made?
Because it's not a decision he makes. This is precisely the point.
Are you honestly telling me? Are you honestly
The
telling me
leader of
that
the
Keir
Labour
Starmer?
Party, Peter, does not decide who is and who isn't a Labour MP. The National Executive Committee of the Labour Party has to endorse every Labour person who has been selected to stand for a parliamentary seat.
Okay.
That is just the process that the Labour Party has in place, and we've not got to that yet. So just be a little bit patient and let process
But I
take
mean, we can't
take
be
its
patient because
course.
time has run out. I mean,
Well,
time has run
time
out.
hasn't run out.
Well, it has. Diane Abbott cannot.
Nomination
Ca
Nominations aren't even open for the general election. The writ hasn't even been issued yet for the general election. The nominations close in over a week's time.
okay.
There is time for the Labour Party to resolve this issue, but it's not for me on talk radio or even for Keir Starmer to decide the future of somebody. It is for the due process that is set out in the Labour Party rulebook.
Okay. Yes or no? Should Diane Abbott be allowed to stand in Hackney to be a Labour candidate? What do you think?
Look, what I think is Diane Abbott has been a trailblazer for black women, black and minority ethnic people in the Labour Party. I think she has a future in the Labour Party, and I want to see her have a future in the Labour
Is that
Party.
future in the House of Commons or the House of Lords, Andrew?
I think she has a future in the Labour Party. Those decisions are way, way above my pay grade.
Okay, well,
Diane is a friend.
you can wave a magic wand, Andrew. Let's say, for the sake of argument, we'll promote you for a few seconds to be leader of the Labour Party. Should Diane Abbott, or perhaps even chairman of the NEC, which is clearly a much more important position, should Diane Abbott be allowed to stand? Would you like to see her as an MP?
Diane Abbott's a friend. She's a colleague, and she has, I think, been a trailblazer. And I want to see Diane Abbott have a future in the Labour Party.
Are you annoyed at how she's been treated?
Whatever that future may be.
If she's a friend of yours, Andrew, you must be annoyed at how she's been treated.
I'm not annoyed. Look, politics is politics, and we've had to go through a process to get to where we are today. Because of comments that were made that Diane has apologised for. She is a Labour MP. She's in the Parliamentary Labour Party. And let's see what happens as the week goes on.
Okay, Andrew, I promised you I'd talk about health, and now we will. Junior doctors have called a 5-day strike just before the election. How are you, as well, in a few weeks' time, you could well be social care minister, or maybe even another promotion above that. What are you and the Labour Party going to do to solve this issue? Are you going to give junior doctors a 35% pay rise?
Look, when we go into the Department for Health and Social Care, should the electorate vote for a Labour government on the 4th of July, we don't know what we are going to find. I suspect that the nation's finances are greatly depleted and in a precarious state. I suspect there's not going to be a great deal of extra money. But what we do know is that this isn't just about pay. It's about terms, it's about conditions, it's about treating our NHS staff and our junior doctors in this case with a degree of respect. And it's about rebuilding our National Health Service with the staff at the heart of that decade of renewal that we want to see, so that we get better outcomes for patients. We don't want to see strike action. That puts patients at risk. It increases waiting times and waiting lists. What we want to do is to begin to fix the NHS so we get those waiting times down, we get those waiting lists down.
Tell us how you're going to do that, because you've a big new policy out today to get those waiting list times down. What are you actually going to do?
We have. So what we've said is we will double the number of scanners to diagnose patients earlier, and that includes using some of the latest state-of-the-art AI scanners. It's about having the biggest expansion of NHS staff in its history. It's about using spare capacity in the private sector free of charge to patients, just like we did in the Blair and Brown Labour governments, to get those waiting times and waiting lists down by using that extra capacity in the healthcare system. And it's about reforming the NHS within the public sector to get more out of the service for what we put in. That, we believe, will deliver 40,000 appointments a week. The doubling of scanners and the extra appointments will cost about £1.3 billion.
Is that all fully costed?
Is that all? It is.
It's all fully costed
by clamping down on tax dodgers and closing those non-dom tax loopholes that still exist, despite the Chancellor saying that he's closed them. This has
all got the Rachel Reeves, Sue Gray stamp of approval. Everybody's happy. It's all within existing budgets.
It absolutely is. And what that will deliver, Peter, is an extra 2 million appointments over the course of the 5-year term in government, and begin to drive down those waiting times and waiting lists like we did before.
Okay, well, we're going to keep a close eye on you doing that. Leslie has been in touch on text and says, "Hi, Peter. Doctors and nurses say they are at breaking point with long hours. How are they going to work more hours and into the weekend?"
Well, that's a good question. We'll ask hospitals to begin working on evening and weekend clinics on day one of the Labour government. But what we also want to do is we want to ensure that the staff who do feel burnt out start to ensure that they have better terms, better conditions.
How do you do both those things, Andrew? Because you're saying they're burnt out, but also you want them to work more.
Yeah, but it's also about working more smartly. So picking up extra shifts is something which doctors and nurses already do. We will turbocharge this work in partnership with NHS staff, because many of them want to be able to work more flexibly, and that includes working in the weekends. But you're right, there is a separate challenge here. Many NHS staff are burnt out, but that's why we will also oversee the biggest expansion of NHS staff in its history. The cavalry is coming with Labour. We are going to turbocharge recruiting the doctors, the nurses, the healthcare assistants of tomorrow. But it's not a quick fix, and I'm not going to pretend it's a quick fix. But picking up those extra shifts, it's already happening in a handful of hospitals. We want to take that idea and spread it across the NHS, spread that best practice. So those hospitals that are achieving more appointments by having flexible working, we think we can spread that good practice across the NHS.
There is a place where Labour does run the NHS, and there are all sorts of bad outcomes as a result in Wales. Are you going to take the lessons of Wales, or are you going to learn the mistakes that have been made over the past 25 years when Labour has been running the NHS in Wales? Andrew Gwynne.
Well, look, I seek to be a health minister for England. Health is devolved. I'm ambitious for the NHS in England, but I'm also ambitious for the NHS in Wales. And look, over the last 14 years, the one thing that the NHS in England and in Wales have had in common is a Tory government at Westminster making the decisions on funding. So I want to work with our colleagues in Wales to see how we can improve patient outcomes across the whole of...
Do you think they've done a good job?
No, it's not about me telling Wales how to do the job.
You must have an opinion, Andrew. You're a shadow health minister. You're a senior person in the Labour Party. You must have an opinion on whether the Welsh NHS has been run well under Labour.
The Welsh NHS, look, there are certainly some parts of the Welsh NHS that are struggling, and there are parts of the English NHS that are struggling. There are parts of the Scottish NHS that are struggling. There are parts of the Northern Irish NHS.
Could Labour have run it better in Wales? Could they have done a better job?
And what we've got to look at are some of the underlying causes. Now, in Wales, you have particular issues with geography. It is a very sparsely populated country with large concentrations of former industrial communities in the south of Wales, and there are huge health inequalities there that need to be tackled.
And these are exactly the kind of issues that you, I think it's probably when you get into government, will have to deal with. But as we've seen in Wales, hold on. In the last 25 years in Wales, when Labour has been running the NHS there, they've struggled with some of these problems. So surely you can learn the lessons of where they have made mistakes.
And we will learn lessons, but part of the reason that they've struggled is because they have also had 14 years of a Conservative government in Westminster that has cut funding to local government, that has cut funding to public health
But they've been in
services, that
power.
has
They've
cut
been in power as
funding.
the devolved government.
They have been in power making really tough decisions with budgets that have been set in Westminster. And the reality is that unless we invest in our communities, unless we invest in early years, unless we invest in better housing standards, unless we invest in the environment, unless we invest in jobs and economic activity, we will never tackle the health inequalities across the whole of the United Kingdom
Okay.
that are far too prevalent in far too many communities. The social determinants of health matter as much as what we put into the NHS, and that will be part of the mission of the next Labour government.
I'm going to ask you 2 more questions, then I'm going to let you go because I know you're a busy bee, Andrew, and I really do appreciate it. I know you've given me a lot of time this evening. Rishi Sunak says the timing of the doctors' strike looks, as he puts it, incredibly political. It's a few days before the election. Is he right?
Look, I don't want to see the strikes take place because it makes the situation worse for patients. It increases the waiting list. And I hope the junior doctors think again about the industrial action. Is it political? No, I don't think it is. I think what's happened here is that the junior doctors for a very long time feel that they've not been listened to with respect by a series of former Tory health secretaries, by the Prime Minister, who have ratcheted up this industrial action.
They offered them a 12% pay increase. They offered them a 12% pay increase. Would Labour offer them more?
Look, I'm not going to have a negotiation live on Talk Radio, as tempting as that may be.